For lesson 38, both of the topics are on algebra, no geometry part today. The first one we are going to take binomials. So we're going to have parentheses times parentheses, and maybe 2, 3, 4 times. They might be multiplied by each other. And we're going to take what we've been doing with factoring, and instead of just having an expression, we're going to put it equal to something, and then solve and find what x actually has to be. So first, if we have a parentheses squared, that means that we have parentheses times parentheses, and I strongly recommend writing it out. 2x squared plus 3y times 2x squared plus 3y. Yes, there are shortcuts, but I see way too many mistakes when you try to shortcut, and if you write it out, I see far fewer. So then we simply need to FOIL. So 2x squared times 2x squared. Kevin, what will that give me? 4x to the fourth. And then I'm going to take outside times outside. 2x squared times 3y. Nicole, what's that going to give me? Then I'm going to do the insides. 3y times 2x squared. Wait a minute, I just did 2x squared times 3y. That's going to give me the same thing again. The O and the I will always repeat when you just got one parentheses that's squared. But then when I do last times last, 3y times 3y, that's what I have then. So plus 9y squared. Then I have two like terms in the middle that I can combine and say 12x squared y. And I keep the 9y squared, and I keep the 4x to the fourth. So this would be my solution when I squared that sum, when I took that parentheses with a plus sign times itself. Questions on that? Do you see a GCF on that? If it says expand, then you're not going to factor it. Okay, now the mistake that I see the most, so I'm just going to caution you, this is not something where you can just distribute that square. It is not 2x squared squared plus 3y squared. It is not just 4x to the fourth plus 9y squared, because that leaves out the term that we need in the middle. And that's the mistake I see a lot. You can't just distribute that exponent to the two things that are added. We good with that one? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Okay, you also may have things to different powers. If I had this to the fourth power, I'll do parentheses times parentheses times parentheses times parentheses. Then I would FOIL these two, and then distribute and get everything all together. I'm not going to do one that wild and crazy today. We're just going to do the third power like this one really says. But if you had more, you'd just write them out and you'd group them 2 at a time, as many as you could, and then you'd keep going until everything had been multiplied by everything else and you were finished. So let's go back to what this one really says. This one really says that we have x plus 2 times x plus 2 times x plus 2. So I can pick any two of those to multiply first, and then FOIL. So if I FOIL x plus 2 times x plus 2, I get x squared plus 2x plus another 2x, so plus 4x. And 2 times 2 is 4. Everybody good with that for that parentheses? Okay, then I need to multiply that times my other parentheses, x plus 2. If I only do one set of parentheses at this point, it is wrong. The way I wrote that says x plus 2 is only multiplied by x squared. It needs to be x plus 2 is multiplied by all three of those. The parentheses matter, both sets. Now I need to take everything in that first parentheses, x plus 2, and multiply that by the whole thing that I have on the other side. So if I take the x times everything, I get x cubed plus 4x squared plus 4x. So far, so good? That's x times everything. I'm supposed to take x plus 2 times everything. And I haven't done the 2 yet, so I have to keep going. So I need to now take the 2 times the x squared, so I have plus 2x squared. The 2 times the 4x, so I have plus 8x. And the 2 times the 4, so I have plus 8. Does that look right to everybody? And I like to write mine this way so that the like terms are lined up. It makes it a little bit easier for me when I then combine my like terms. I just have the x cubed. Janae, how many x squares do I have?
4.
I have these 4x squares and
6.
these 2, so I have 6x squared. What about how many x's do I have, Elias?
12.
So plus 12x. And then I only have the 8 out at the end. So this is my answer after I have cubed that binomial that we started with. Everybody feel comfortable with that? Give me thumbs up, thumbs down, or something in between. All right, looks good. Let's move on to solving by factoring. To solve by factoring, you must get it equal 0. And I require that you write that equal 0 on every single line. Factoring does not work if it equals 1. And I have students every year in honors that try to factor when it equals 1 or 2. It does not work. So I require that you write equal 0 just to try to get it imprinted on our brains that that's the only way factoring works. Then we take whatever's on the other side and we factor it. Maybe we just have 2 parentheses equal 0. Maybe we have a GCF times 1 parentheses equals 0. Maybe we have a GCF times 2 parentheses equals 0. Once we have it factored, at least one of the factors has to be 0. Maybe all 3 of them are, the way I do it here. But at least one of them has to be equal to 0. So let's try solving this first one using that idea. Is this one equal to 0? So I have to get it there. And I want to write it in order with the biggest exponent down to the smallest. So I look at that and I've got a plus x squared. Hey, I like that it starts with a positive. So I'm going to keep that on the left as a positive x squared. And then minus x, those will stay on the left. And I'll move the 6 to the other side, so it's the one that changes to a negative. Now I need you guys to help me. Let's factor this thing. Since it starts with 1x squared, I should be able to factor it with parentheses that start with x, because the x times the x would give me the 1x squared. What do my numbers need to multiply to be? Which number out of that equation tells me what they multiply to equal? Call it out. They need to multiply to be negative 6, and what do they add to? Now raise your hand. Who can tell me numbers that work for that? What multiplies to be negative 6 and then adds to be negative 1? Shayla? Negative 3 plus 2. Thumbs up or down from the rest of you. So we put our minus 3 and our plus 2 in there. Zero factor theorem says I've got it factored, parentheses times parentheses. At least one of the parentheses has to be 0. So either the x minus 3 parentheses is 0, or the x plus 2 parentheses is 0, or both. Solve that, so either x is 3, or x is negative 2. Now, with one this easy that starts with 1x plus or minus something, if you want to skip writing the x minus 3 equals 0 and just write down x is 3 and x is negative 2, that's fine. The messier ones that we'll get on some of these other examples might be a good idea to write it out when you have to add and subtract and then you have to divide and all of that to make sure we don't make a mistake. Are we good with this example? Okay, moving on then to example 4. This one's going to be messier, right? Because we don't have the 1x squared. Is it already equal 0? Is it in the correct order? Is there a GCF? So I need to do my AC method. I need to find two things that multiply to be 18, and they need to add to be negative 19. Who can come up with numbers that work for that? Fred. Everybody comfortable with negative 1 and negative 18? That means I need to rewrite the minus 19x as either minus x minus 18x or minus 18x minus 1x. I'll just stick with the minus 1x and the minus 18x. I will keep my plus 3 and my 6x squared, and I want to see the equal 0 on every line all the way through. So now I group these. GCF for 6x squared and x. What's that going to be? What's the GCF of 6x squared and x? Just an x. So if I factor that out, I have 6x minus 1. GCF of 18 and 3. 18x and 3, sorry. Ella? So 3. So I'm going to try plus 3, and then that would have to be multiplied by minus 6x to get minus 18x. My parentheses isn't matching. So when it's off by the plus or minus sign, I say, well, I'm going to try making that a minus 3 instead and see if that'll work. Minus 3 times plus 6x would give me minus 18x, so far so good. And minus 3 times minus 1 would give me the plus 3. So now I do have a matching parentheses. That means my factors are x minus 3 and 6x minus 1. I want to see equals 0 on every row if you want credit on your work. Factoring only works if it equals 0. First factor, what's the solution? Everybody. That one's easy to look at and write down x equals 3. This one, not so much, so probably a good idea to say 6x minus 1 is 0, or at least 6x is 1. Then we see that we need to divide both sides by 6, so x can also be 1/6. Is there a question on that? Or I saw a hand up a moment ago. Are we good with that? All right, let's continue. Is this one in the order we want it? What do we need to get? Hayden, you're shaking your head now, so what do we need to get? Okay, so we got to get it equal 0. And so I look at that, and I also say, my biggest exponent this time is the 3. And I'd sure like I want to start with a plus. If I put everything on the right, it's going to have a minus x cubed. So I think I'll let the minus 36x stay over here, but I'll bring the minus x cubed over so it becomes a plus x cubed. I'll bring the 16x over so it becomes a minus 16x squared. And the minus 36x stayed there on the left. And now that's equal 0. Okay, what's different on this one from what we've done on some of the others? Are you seeing anything that's different from what we did before? Yeah, there's a GCF. So we need to factor the GCF out first. So x times x squared minus 16x minus 36 needs to be equal to 0. Now I've got x times a long parentheses that starts with 1x squared. I like the 1x squared ones because that means I can have two parentheses that each start with a 1x in there. And so I've got to keep my GCF all the way through. Now I need two numbers that multiply to be negative 36 and add to be negative 16. This is a little bit harder because so many things to get 36. Let's see, I'll worry about the minus in a minute. I could have 1 and 36. I could have 4 and 9. I could have 6 and 6. Those don't look promising for a 16. Oh, I could have 3 and 12. Something, am I leaving one out of this thing? Is there something that I'm forgetting about in this list, Griff?
18 and
2 and 8, but can I get a negative 16?
negative 18 and
What do you guys think? Negative 18 and positive 2, will those work? And so I put in my minus 18 and my plus 2, and that means now I've got 3 things multiplied to equal 0. I have to pay attention to all, however many factors I have to pay attention to all of them. The x could be 0. Does that make sense? Can I have x be the number 0? Okay. X can be, what for this next one? 18, and x can be negative 2. So I can sometimes have 3 answers on this. Everybody get that? One final example, and then with a couple of different variations on it. What do we do first with this one? What should we do first on this one? I should see more hands going up. Leah, what would you do first? Yeah, we've got a GCF, so let's factor the 2 out in front. And that's going to leave us, what, x squared minus 3x minus 28. Don't forget the equal 0. Okay, now, hey, it starts with 1x squared. I like that. So I've got my 2 that then looks like the rest of this. Maybe I can factor with 2 parentheses that start with x. Multiply negative 28. Add negative 3. Who can come up with numbers that work? Evelyn? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Negative 7 and plus 4. Do those work? So now we've got 3 factors. So, first factor is 2. Can 2 equal 0? That one's not going to give me any solutions. If it's just a number, it's not going to give me a solution. That one, remember the 0 factor theorem says at least 1. It doesn't say all of them have to work. At least one of them has to work. That one doesn't. What? And then we get everybody x equals and x equals. So those 2 work and give us solutions. Comfortable with that? Question?
Do you want us to break what equals 0
No.
out?
You think that, but you just look at the 2 is not going to give me a solution, go on to the others. Yeah. Wait a minute. There's slight variations on this. Same problem, except now instead of the 2, if it's like the one we just saw and it's just an x out in front, if it's just an x, that does give us the solution, and then we still have the other 2. Sometimes we might have a GCF that has numbers and variables. Can 2x equal 0? Is there a number I could put in for x and make 2x equal 0? Mateo? What? If x is 0, if 2x is 0, when x is 0, so we would get that solution there, and then we'd have the x is 7 and the x is negative 4. So I just wanted to point out with the GCF, if it's just a number, it doesn't give you a solution. If it has a letter in it, even if it's just a single term, that can give you the solution x equals 0. Any other questions on this? And we're going to start on homework for me to check and stamp, make sure we're on the right track here.